Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk,
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos. Your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC Radio. I'm quite looking forward to sharing this episode with you. I really enjoyed this. I say that a lot, but I really did. We've been having some great episodes lately. I hope you guys have been enjoying some great folks and having some great conversations, and this one is nonetheless. So it's really, really great. I have Alex Ervik Johnsen with me, if I'm saying that correctly. I just call him Alex. And he's a great guy from Norway. Been in the Citrix world for a long time, in the EUC world, and now he works over at Nutanix. So we're going to chat with him about EUC, about Nutanix, of course, about EUC, some of his beliefs, and it's a really great interview. He's really great guy that has great insights into what's going on within this space and beyond. So with no further ado, here's my interview with Alex from Nutanix. Okay, Alex, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me. I'm looking forward to this. You know, I've known you since, I think I met you in 2004 or 2005. 2004. And that's actually a really great story how we met. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was actually up in the mountains in Norway at the
Yes.
Citrix user group event, right?
Yes, correct. We met at the wine tasting. We might have met before, but I actually got to know you at the wine tasting thing. And for the people listening, so I go up to the Norwegian users group, which if you ever get a chance to go to something like that, please do, because I think the Norwegians have one of the best users groups in the world. And they're great guys. They have a great time. They're great tech. It's a party. And just as much fun as you can ask for. And so we go up to this really neat hotel in the middle of the mountains, and it's sort of an old castle too, like type of hotel, right? And there's all these corridors and small rooms and big rooms and all this. And we go up to this, and we're there, and one of the guys says, "Doug, please attend this wine tasting thing." I was like, "Well, is it going to be Norwegian?" "Oh, no, we'll have some English." It's like, okay, So I get up there. The whole thing's in Norwegian, which makes sense. I'm in Norway, and it's all Norwegians, right? But I'm just sort of sitting there, and my friend and I were sort of making jokes about the Norwegian, or what he was saying, that it sounded like something else, right? And you were laughing at our stupid jokes. So that's how you got stuck with me being a friend.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Shouldn't have laughed at my stupid jokes. That's the first rule.
Anyway, now I actually remember what you said.
yeah, it was something like wet dog. The Germans are coming and wet dog.
The Germans are coming and a wet dog.
In the wet, yes.
That was the start of our friendship, Doug.
That's exactly. And those people are listening. You're like, why didn't you not run? Why should I listen to Alex? Okay, so for those who might not know who you are, as always, my first question is, who are you? So who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Alexander Ervik Johnsen. I am a guy from Norway, just outside of Oslo. I was born and raised in Oslo. I'm 42. Getting old. Yeah. I've been in the industry for 21, 22 years now. I more or less worked with Citrix stuff since back in 1997. So I'm probably a dinosaur in that world. Been doing consulting, worked for the distributor part of the stuff here in Norway for several years, over 10 years actually. And I moved over to Nutanix 4.5 years ago, and it's great fun. It's great fun. 2 kids, surf, snowboard, some cycling, some activity. Yep.
So when I met you, you were only like 25 years old then.
Yeah, that's correct.
Gosh almighty, how
I was
time
young.
flies.
You were young as well.
I was young too. Yeah, I just turned 50, believe it or not. So
Yeah.
I can't believe I'm that old nowadays. I don't feel it. Well, my body feels it, I guess, but my brain definitely doesn't. Anyone that age knows what I mean by that. So you'll get there, Alex. You'll get there.
Yep. Yep.
So you're an old Citrix guy, but nowadays you're working at Nutanix, and there's a lot of Citrix folks over at Nutanix. A lot. Can you tell us a bit about what you're doing? What's like a typical day for you? What do you do at Nutanix?
So these days, I more or less work together with a guy that's called Glenn. So we handle customers and the everything from defense to those kind of police, those kind of customers. So a typical day is writing stuff, customer meetings, flying out somewhere when we are allowed to fly. But COVID granted us more time to focus, so it's more focused work on existing customers and prospects at the moment. Before when we were only 3 people here in Norway in Nutanix, we more or less, I saw the inside of a airport and an airplane 3-4 times a week. So I guess COVID let us do more focus on stuff these days. And that's a good thing, but I miss going out to the customers and sitting face to face and talking with them and presenting stuff, because a huge part of the job is presenting stuff, right? And designing stuff. And so a typical day is design, writing stuff, answering questions, those kind of things.
Yeah, I loved, and I still do it if I ever get the chance, was to chat with customers, just sit in front of a customer. When I was an engineer, I didn't really like that. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to build things. I wanted to fix things, and I didn't want to deal with the quote unquote stupid people. As I got a little bit older, got privy to that world, I absolutely love it. Sitting across from somebody and being able to share with them what you believe and what you love, and getting them to understand what you love, or solving their problems, verbally or whatever, is a great joy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it gives me a lot of energy as well.
Yeah.
And especially when I jumped on and got the offer from Nutanix, I was doing something that was probably a bit out of my comfort zone. Although Citrix and Nutanix has a long-standing partnership, I was battling people that love their 3-tier and they love their virtualization and they're protecting their jobs, right? And that's as the hyper-converged infrastructure market grew, and people more or less nowadays, when they're looking for a new solution, they tend to go there, right? But in the start, it was, you feed off energy because you're able to help customers achieve something they didn't think was possible, right? Because it's a new technology, or for some, it's still a very new technology. And for the customers that's been using it for several years, it's a de facto, right? That they could never go back to the old ways of designing an infrastructure. So it gives me much pleasure and energy sitting in front of the customers, or even talking at a conference, right? Or in a user group, or these such things. I was actually really happy because we run something that's called the Nutanix Ultras. So it's for the partners here in Norway. Selected few, there are like 20 people of the best Nutanix partners we have, and the techie guys. And we were actually able to pull off Nutanix Ultras back in, I think it was September. And, everybody was so happy to see each other, although there were some COVID restrictions. You had to sit like 2 meters apart, all these kind of things, and have the stuff you put on your hands, disinfective stuff, and but no face masks. It was everybody was so happy, and there was a joy to present everything that Nutanix has been doing since COVID came, right? And I think people were, like me, fed up sitting on Zoom a couple of times a day for a couple of hours a day, every day.
Yeah, you got it. You got it. I mean, Zoom is great, or GoToMeeting or whatever you use, but I tell you, if there's one thing COVID made great was Zoom, and also destroyed was Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Sort of interesting, but there's nothing beats, face to face. It's you build relationships that'll last decades, a lifetime, right? And and the other thing is you get that personal feel, you get the vibration from you can see when they're happy, when they're sad, when they get it, when they don't. You don't necessarily get that over video, right? And there's nothing beats contact.
And the issue with Zoom type of meetings is you never know, because all of a sudden somebody turns off their camera, right? It's like my wife. She's a teacher, and she wants to see her students when she's talking to them, because they just turn up their camera. You don't know what they're doing. Maybe they just left the room, right? Not saying that customers do that, but I think it's probably easier to just go down to the kitchen and get a coffee, right? When you're in the meeting, there's a coffee can and there's a water, and people just pour, and you can talk and you can see how they react to stuff. And as you said, if they get it or not.
Yeah, no, I agree. So I liked what you said about, going out and not everyone, trying to sell a different way to compute in many ways, right? Not that Nutanix is that different, but can you maybe share some of those conversations, or what kind of objections did people have? Do they still have them?
Yeah, so I'm not going to cut somebody's head off, but one of the major issues is people trying to protect their jobs for some odd reason.
Of course.
And yeah, I get it, but at the same time, I can't get it, or I don't get it, because, I think both you and me, we're always been a bit interested in technology, right? And we like to find out what this new shiny product is. And if we have time, we also put it into our lab and we tear it apart, right? And I guess that's the curiosity that I have. And newsflash, not every people are like us, Doug. And and I get it.
And that's a good
people
thing.
Are different, right? Yeah, it's a good thing. If everybody was one kind of person, it would have been boring, right? But I would like, if you see how the IT industry has evolved over the couple of 20, 25 years, everything is evolving in a massive scale and at the speed of light almost, right? And when we came into customer meetings a couple of years ago, there were people that were sitting there and they had objections about everything we were saying because it didn't involve sounds, right? So they couldn't fiddle with their loons and all these type of things that a typical 3-tier architecture have. And we said, you should spend your time ensuring better quality of service for your users, because they are actually your customers, right? And if you can transform your infrastructure into being cloud-like and don't care about management, and you have all these consoles, right? They tend to have 5, 10, 15 consoles to operate the stuff. You boil that down to one console and you do everything within the console. And yeah, but we need this and that. Yeah, but see, you don't. And if you take the conversation over to what AWS and Azure and GCP and all these kind of solutions do, you don't call them up and say, hey, I need this hypervisor and I want that kind of hardware and I want that kind of sound and I want this kind of network switches, right? You just go in, you say, I need a SQL server I need a web and a virtual machine because I'm going to build my web app, right? And it has a database. You don't care if it's Postgre or SQL Server or whatever they use. It's there, and it's there in 10 seconds, right? And this is the mentality that also Nutanix is funded on, right? Or founded on, that we should make things as easy. You know, when the iPhones first came out, people were like, hey, what do we need this for? And the notion of you have an app store, if you want to play a game, it installs on your phone or iPad or whatever you have in seconds, right? And this is what we try to do with Nutanix as well. We will make literally the infrastructure go away, or it's not that annoying. That's what you're used to, right? And these, I still actually go into meetings and people, I'm not saying they're offended, but they see us as I'm not sure if threat is the wrong,
no, I think threat
or the
or
right word for it, but yeah.
Threat's probably a better word.
Yeah, but as soon as the customers actually get the intention and why you would try to do something like this, they get it, right? They get that you could actually spend time on things that matter. Because for the people that are sitting on the financial side, they don't understand in 2020 why you should need 5 people to manage these kind of stuff, right? Because they look and they read reports and they read Gartners and Forresters and all these kind of reports. And you know, if we were to found a company today, Doug, we wouldn't go there and try to buy big amounts of infrastructure that was based on something old and like dinosaur-like infrastructure, right? We would try to figure out, is it the best way to do split between something in our own data center, but because of security and regulations, and then what could we build in the cloud maybe? You need these kind of technologies to make the new world happen, right? And it's still very giving and energizing getting these into these kind of meetings, because they actually, if you get them to understand the notion behind the thought, it actually you accomplish something, right?
Yeah, no, of course. I totally get it. Yeah, I mean, what do I say? It's always difficult to get people, one, out of their comfort zone, and two, to feel like a technology. I mean, this is age old. I remember dealing with this, trying to sell Citrix in the 90s, right? Mm-hmm. Or trying to sell a tool that will solve a problem, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the biggest place you see, but anywhere, I think we all have these stories, right? And or hey, is my job going to be eliminated because of this? That's definitely a real problem.
Yeah, and I've always seen opportunities in new technologies, right? Instead of making it something negative, what's the positives, right? What could we actually achieve by doing something that's new? And it's quite right. Back in the days when we were waiting for somebody to set something up because we couldn't continue with the Citrix implementation before these guys were there and had done their job. And it's taking something that was complex and making it less complex. I mean, I have Citrix customers, for example, here in Norway, and VMware VDI guys that just serve themselves, right? They do everything within the infrastructure that they are responsible for, without waiting for X amount of other people to do their job, so they can do their job. And I guess the simplification of stuff is a major driver for many, that they chose Nutanix and continue to choose Nutanix, because it's not only is it capping their OPEX and all these ROIs and everything, but it actually saves them time, and they can focus on making the service they offer better.
I totally agree.
Instead of putting out fires all the time, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally 100% agree. So with Nutanix, when I think of Nutanix, from without diving into it, right? If I just think of Nutanix, I think of, hyperconvergence. I don't think of necessarily EUC. So where does Nutanix fit into the EUC? Why are Citrix people working there? Things like why did you go there? How does Nutanix benefit the EUC space?
So there's a couple of things. The quick answer to it, without having any drawings and everything, is that we take down the complexity of a EUC solution. So there's less moving parts. We speed up the users or the user experience, because the way the Nutanix platform is designed. Users are using sitting on the VMs that are very, very close to the silicon, right? So there's no 3-tier architecture. You have to traverse to actually get the file or something. And if you're using file servers as well in this combination, your roaming profiles, your user profiles, everything will be sitting next to the place that you're actually working on, the VDI or the CNAP machine or whatever you have, making the login times and the quality of the service that you actually provide for your end users much, much better. So that's the quick, swift answer. Yeah, sorry.
No, please go ahead. Continue.
Yeah, no, the complexity of these solutions, right, has and still are, you need special folks with special certifications and knowledge, right? And those guys doesn't grow on trees anymore, right? And for these guys that sit, and I can actually relate to a specific customer case I did like 2-3 years ago, where we went in, we took the old hypervisor image that was running on Xen server at the time, just moved it over to, we were doing a POC. And I just moved the image manually via CLA over from the Xen server platform to the Nutanix HV platform that we were running on the hypervisor, our own hypervisor. And it's kind of funny because just booting it up, making it available to the Citrix Studio, I think the logon time for the users on the old platform were 30, 40, 50 seconds. And then when the users started logging on, they were logging on at 18 seconds. And then we did some tuning, and we built a new image on HV. And when we were finished, the users were logging on 8 to 10 seconds. I mean, for some customers, Citrix and such solutions has just been a strategical solution, right? Solve some problem with updates and a workforce that's spread across the globe, maybe, to get their documents and all the systems centralized. And people were probably just forgetting that it is actually a big investment, and it's pretty crucial for the business operations, right? And it was just sitting there in the corner. It just worked, but it was complex to manage, right? And it was complex to upgrade, and all these moving parts that we know about. And when we did this for many customers, it's actually it's a new spring for those customers, right? Because it's easier to manage, easier to operate, and easier to patch and all these kinds of things, and it gives a better user experience. So that was actually a long answer to a short question.
No, it's a great answer. It's sort of like we changed the way we do application delivery. Why not change the way we do infrastructure? right?
Yep.
So, I mean, that's the short answer, right?
Yeah.
But yours is a lot more detailed and better. I like it. So, let's, you're. I don't want to sell Nutanix short in any way, but one of the things we wanted to do with have you on the podcast is talk about, EUC in general and sort of get some of your personal views, because you're not just a Nutanix employee, but you've been an EUC guy for a long time. You're a CTP. You do conferences and speaking engagements. You have very firm beliefs on this industry, and you have experiences related to it. So that being said, I'd like to throw some stuff out around EUC and sort of get your views on it. Does that sound fun?
Cool.
Whether you think it's fun or not, I'm going to ask the question. So first of all, what sort of excites you about EUC today? Is there any technologies? It could be Nutanix too, right? But if there's anything that's that's new or exciting or trending or just that's maybe even old that you're still really excited about, that you think people should look into or be on that wagon, so to speak.
Yeah. First and foremost, I still think EUC has a big space in our industry, because it's a really easy solution that solves and especially in these COVID times, right? People couldn't be in the office. You had to have some security, and you had to know that your data was secure, right, in some data center somewhere. So I still have a big heart for the traditional EUC. Not that being any brand, but the cool things I've seen, and it's actually related to VR, like VR from a data center far, far away, right? If you're working in oil and gas and you are on an oil platform, and there's some graphic cards sitting in a data center 1,000 miles away, and you're actually on the platform connected to this stuff. And it's an old story, but I used to have a customer that was building boats here in Norway, but it makes up for the situation around it. Was that so they had a shipyard here in Norway. They were building boats in Norway. They had CAD designers for the boats spread across Norway, a couple of other places in Europe, somewhere in the US, and somewhere in Asia. And the way they were working, where they were shipping those CAD files around the globe. So somebody would sit and work on it, and then they copied several gigs of data so that the next guy could do something, right? And when they went over to a centralized Citrix solution, it was Citrix with some GPUs, people were 10 times more efficient, right? Maybe 100 times more efficient, because they hadn't. And another big issue is that the data never went lost, right? So no big problems with eavesdropping or hackers or a USB drive that was gone missing with some, these drawings for boats, they are massively expensive, right? It's intellectual data. And I still love that story, because, efficiency is, if you can help customers do something more efficient and make their workday many times better, I think that's a good thing. And
that's what we're here for. That's the entire job, right?
Yeah. And so I guess that still works, right? It's still big what we do. Cool things, yeah, VR is one of them. I still remember we were discussing many years ago that somebody should do roaming profiles across MacBooks and Windows PCs. I guess that's not happening anytime soon, but I would love to see that. Other things, yeah,
cloud persona. That would be
yeah, cloud persona. I guess I see a huge uptake in cloud-hosted virtual desktops, if they are Nutanix Frame or if they are Citrix or VMware. Yeah, but it's still lacking, the last mile. How can you, and not to brag and speak specifically about Nutanix, but I work at Nutanix, right? But we're trying to build. So right now you can move stuff from an on-premise Nutanix cluster to AWS, and Azure is in beta, right? And moving stuff around between all these clouds, that is massive.
I was going to ask you about, you brought up a few things. You brought up Frame, which is something on my list, and but also this, that we are moving to cloud. COVID has definitely changed everything, right? It made what we do, it legitimized what we do. Of course, Microsoft also legitimized what we do at the beginning of the year when they announced, or at the end of last year, right, announced WVD. And then COVID comes around and makes WVD even more sought after, right? And our technology more sought after. A customer that ran, a Citrix style solution did not have as many problems as everyone else, right? That's what everyone went to, or a Frame. When I say Citrix style, I mean something like that. So the cloud's coming. Where do you see we are with that? There's still, there's the conversation around, on-prem versus cloud, cloud only, DAS versus VDI, VDI in the cloud, but it's still VDI. What's your view on all this? Where are we? Also maybe what's needed to fully get there?
First and foremost, I think we will see that we will live in some sort of hybrid world for the next 10 plus years.
10 years. Wow, cool.
10, 15, I guess. That's actually what Gartner and Forrester is doing when they're writing about as well. It has to do, we've talked about this several times before, both at conferences and other places. There's so many Windows applications out there, right? And although you might be able to at some point in time, maybe make them web available or move them to the cloud in some way, you're always stuck with some other apps that either the developer is still stuck in the old way of doing things, or they've not fully embraced that there's a solution that's called cloud and you can move to it, right? And as long as you have all these native apps, I tend to call them native apps, that's not built for the cloud. So for the foreseeable future, you will be stuck with some sort of hybrid platform, right? The problem I see is several customers, or not customers, several vendors, they do very much all their new stuff development in the cloud. But what about all those customers that, due to security reasons, never will be in the cloud, right? Like in the US, you have all these kind of government secret agencies, and all around the world.
They have their own cloud. They have government gov cloud or something.
Yeah, gov clouds, but not all the sensitive data can go in the gov clouds, right? They are, spy stuff, and you need to secure all this data in some way. And moving to the cloud will be at some point in time the de facto standard. But until that happens, you have to have a mix, right? And I'm a firm believer, and one of the big reasons I joined Nutanix 4.5 years ago was the simplicity and the belief that you're not tied down to one technology, right? You can choose. So at the point when I joined Nutanix, you could choose the hypervisor of your choice to run on the Nutanix software, right? And we've surpassed that. You can choose hardware vendor, you can choose hypervisor, and now you can even choose the cloud. And you can, as I said previously, you can actually move stuff between on-premise and the cloud. And there's software that actually is intelligent enough to tell you, is the cloud in dollars more efficient and better for you in the long run than doing it on premise with some people managing it, right? And I guess what I'm trying to say is there's a hybrid cloud for the next couple of, let's say, 5 to 10 years, probably, if not things are going faster than we see in the industry at the moment, which is probably will, because that's what history has learned us. But eventually everything will be in the cloud. It's like I said earlier, if we were to start a company today, we would probably be 100% cloud, right?
Yeah, but if you get to a certain 100%, we probably wouldn't even use Windows in any way. I mean, even Microsoft apps, probably not even Office. Maybe we'd go Gmail, right? A lot of companies use, but as you get to scale, things change. Right, there's a lot of people using G Suite at scale, in enterprise, but you start running into tools and different requirements and different apps and different vendors and what have you. But I've always thought of Windows more as an API, and I wouldn't say always, but nowadays I think of Windows as an API. It doesn't need to run locally. The API is what runs the application called the Windows app. Why can't that be in the cloud? Why can't that be Frame, for example? So you're using all these new SaaS apps, like you said, everything's going SaaS, it'll continue to go that way. And you have this and this, but we have these 10 Windows apps that we can't get rid of. Okay, cool. Put them in a Frame. You might not even need the big giant infrastructure called Citrix, right? There's many reasons why. I'm not bad mouthing in any way. I still think it's beyond wonderful. But maybe if you only have a few apps, you could use something like a Frame, right? It's
we have customers that do that today, and actually during COVID at speed, they actually propelled the use of it, right? Because they saw, we need to enable this workforce to work from home. And how do we do that in a quick fashion and a secure fashion? Yeah, we put it up on a VDI. And as you say, it's just something you connect to, as the same if you use Salesforce or the other apps or Gmail or whatever, or Office 365. You just connect to it via a browser, right? And it's the same with Frame or the other type of WVD or Citrix in the cloud or whatever. It's the same. It doesn't necessarily need to sit in your data center and somebody is sitting and watching you, right? Or over it.
You got it. You just mentioned
you just install your applications, so you're good to go.
I agree. I 100% agree. 100% agree. You mentioned WVD. And I had mentioned it also, and it's sort of the elephant in the room nowadays in many ways. It's the biggest boy out there, although it's a baby, right? I mean, it's not even, I guess it's a year old announced, right? But I don't think it's been GA for a year. So, what do you think of WVD?
To be honest, I think it's a natural evolvement for Microsoft. Because they probably see that somewhere down the line, you will connect to Windows Desktop, right? Just like you said, it's more or less an API-driven thing. So you connect your Windows Desktop. And we're not speaking about taking away Windows on a laptop or the gamers out there, like my son, he's a gamer. They will have Windows in some way on their computer due to the nature of the playing games, right? But when you look at a person trying to do their job, it doesn't actually necessarily mean that they need that much of compute and memory and such, right? So I think WVD is a natural evolvement of it's like a longer arm of Windows, more or less. It's like Go Gadget. You remember Go Gadget?
Yeah, of course I do.
Yeah, Go Gadget, Go.
I loved it.
It's more or less.
I love that show. Inspector Gadget.
Me too.
Come on.
Inspector Gadget.
Inspector Gadget. Inspector.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a tool, right? If you look at this as a tool, it's like he has a chainsaw on his arm all of a sudden, right? And if you look at it in that manner, I think WVD is, it would probably have less functions than the Rolls-Royce, which is, I guess it's still Citrix as far as I can see, and as far as I know, and as far as I demo stuff and try things out and speak with customers. But for some customers, it's just like Frame, right? it doesn't necessarily need to be complex in order for something that to work. And I guess that's probably what Microsoft also is seeing. I actually had this discussion with some Citrix employees, and I said, I asked them, what do you see? Do you see WVD as a supplement or something to build on, or is it a competitor? And they just froze. It was like, yeah, we have the workspace app and the workspace thingy, which, by the way, I think is a lovely idea. I remember seeing it like 2 years ago when I was at the CTP meeting down in Fort Lauderdale, and I was like, wow, it's everything you need in one page, right? All your stuff is just there, and it's a great idea. And I know traction at the customer sites is picking up, and they more or less you make a micro app, right? And it does something that makes the person sitting in front of it productive. And I guess WVD is, if it's something that we've learned about Microsoft, I guess, is that Microsoft makes something and they tend to rely on third parties, like, we both know where Citrix came out of, right? Our terminal services world back in the day.
Actually, Citrix, the terminal services came out of Citrix.
Yeah. And, and then Citrix has for many, many, many years, 30 plus years, built their stuff on something that Microsoft hasn't pretty much evolved that much. But, it might be that WVD will surpass all these other technologies at some point. It might happen. Who knows? I wish I had a glass, glass orb.
I so agree with you about Microsoft. They're not stupid, and they built their, if I want to use the word monopoly, it's not a monopoly, of course, but they built their market share, let's say that, on partners, on an ecosystem. Yep. They built an ecosystem is what they did, right? They don't solve printing. They give a pretty good solution, but we have, 20 printer companies. And those guys' entire company is based on Microsoft technology. If Microsoft dies, they die. So who do they promote? They promote Microsoft, right? So you have 20 companies doing marketing for Microsoft, 20 companies selling Microsoft. At Citrix, we used to say, 20 years ago, we'd say every dollar we sell, Microsoft makes $2. Right. So, it's this Microsoft was not a stupid company. They did this and they built a behemoth on it, and we all benefited from it. Right. So, I personally think WVD is really cool. I think that, and we're seeing this out of them too. Some of the, what they're saying is that, to me, it's another API in a way, or not. API is the wrong word for it, but instead of installing on-prem or on a server, we'll get the operating system and it'll be a cloud OS, and then we'll install on top of that, or we'll provision on top of that, right? Just a different location, right? And nowadays, I guess we still go to data centers and install on top of bare metal, but for the most part, we're doing things remotely. And even if you're in that same room, you might be RDPing into the box, right? Well, what's the matter where that box is? Why can't it be, in the fabric called Azure, right? That makes more sense.
And it actually makes me think about something that actually Ruben Spreut showed me a couple of years ago when before Frame got acquired by Nutanix, and that was pretty cool, right? So I put many Citrix solutions up and done projects over the many years I worked with it, and I had large oil and gas companies that had 24/7 around the world operations, and the data centers were in Norway, right? And it didn't actually benefit the guys that were sitting in, let's say, South Korea or in Brazil or in the west coast of the US working on servers in Norway. Okay, the intellectual property of the data was ensured, security was secure, and all that stuff, right? But I remember Ruben showed me, we have users using Frame, and they are sitting in China or in Asia somewhere. And guess what? They're logging onto their VDI machine, that's sitting in a data center in their region, right? So there's no latency, no problems with printers connecting back and forth from a local printer sitting in an office in Singapore and needs to talk to something that's sitting in Oslo, Norway, for example, right? Or any other place in the world. And yeah, it takes down complexity, and it's smart, and it's a new type of thinking, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. VMware, what do you think? I just had Brian Madden on a meetup last week, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fun. Talking to Brian's always a hoot. And we let him go for an hour and 45 minutes. I would say let him go because you don't really, he just, he's like the Energizer Bunny, wind him up and get out of the way, right? Because he's going to share something that's interesting with you. So that's, you have over at VMware, you have Brian, you have Ron, Sean Bass, of course. You have some really great talent, a bunch of other folks that you and I know from the old days. So what do you think of VMware EUC?
I have actually a couple of customers that are pretty large running VMware EUC, and they are super happy. I think they built a great technology. The only downside, and that's my personal opinion, and I'm not hoping somebody will hate me for this, but I think they are trying too hard on making it a solution that fits their own ecosystem or their own stuff, right? So I always was a firm believer, and I still are a firm believer in openness, right? You choose what you need because you like this or that. And I don't like solutions that are tied down to one vendor. And let me explain that a little bit. Because if you run VMware EUC, you are bound to run their hypervisor. And in 2020, and it's been this for a couple of years, you don't necessarily need that hypervisor. And this is always why I also loved Citrix, because they have the same thought, right? You choose the hypervisor of your needs, and then you go off, right? And do whatever you want to do with the solution. And I think, like, if you look at the EUC and the vCloud Foundation and the stuff that VMware are doing with AWS and Azure, it actually is vSphere or ESXi running on top of that data center. And as I said earlier, I'm a firm believer in doing things easier and less moving parts, because that's basically how the cloud was built, right? Less moving parts, less stuff to worry about. And yeah, I think I always liked VMware. I like their EUC story. I really like their technology. It's good. They built solid foundation over the half of the time that Citrix did it. But I don't like the fact that it's bound to one type of technology in order to get it to work. It should be open. So that's my 2 cents.
Right, I agree. I mean, there's reasons for it, right? And there's benefits of it, but it's definitely, you could see it as a negative also. Of course, I can't argue with that 100%. Okay, you know what? I want to sort of wind this thing down. I get a lot of questions. You're a CTP. I don't get as many anymore because I'm not out and about meeting people, darn it. But, hey, you're a CTP. I want to be a CTP, or I want to do this, or how do you speak at conferences? And I try to answer the best I can. What's your take on, these young kids, so to speak, or even some old folks that want to get into doing what you do, the industry guy, not just the guy at Nutanix, right? What's your advice for those folks? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. First, kind of funny question actually, because you've been to a bunch of conferences here in Norway, and what's the typical Norwegian like, right? He doesn't ask questions. He just sits there and he doesn't raise his hand if you're like in a user group type of situation. So you would probably sit there, and as a modest Norwegian, I'm not the typical Norwegian. You probably guessed that already. So I didn't have the, when I started doing this, it was a community effort. So back in, I don't recall, I've been a CTP, I think, for 11 or 12 years now. It was more or less, and that's more or less where you came from as well with the dabcc.com, right? We were sharing information, and we were sharing how we built this stuff and how this works. So we were building solutions, or we were building tools, or what have you. And I think more or less, I'm not saying that all these tools are built, or all these how-to guides or whatever is built, but that's where it started for us. And, keeping up with that 10 plus years, it doesn't come easy, right? You have to find new ways. And for the new people, or the old people, or what have you not, that wants to be a CTP, if they want to seriously persuade or pursue that route, I think the first thing is get vocal, right? Get vocal and get interested, talk to people, sign up for when we all get back to normal habits and go to conferences, and Citrix Synergy is happening again, VMworld is happening again, Nutanix.next is happening again. Come up with find a great idea and pitch it and submit it, and see if you get lucky and the ability to speak at a conference so people notice you, right? I'm not saying that you have to do like your own PR with Citrix stuff. I guess if you want to be a CTP, you have to be a CTA, a Citrix Technology Advocate, to start, and build up the like we did with Norway. Like big props to Tahir Salem for starting the Norwegian user group back in the day. We had a lot of tons of fun. And we were driving this at the time on our spare time, right? It wasn't a day job kind of thing. We were doing it in the evenings, in the night. Don't be afraid to talk about stuff in front of people. And as blunt as that might sound, it actually is the first couple of times terrifying, and it's still sort of terrifying sometimes even today after all these years, especially when you go on a big stage, right? You've done this a couple of times, or not a couple of times, Doug, a great many deals of times. Just focus. That's actually a funny thing. What do you do, Doug, when you have a big audience?
The bigger ones are the easier ones for me.
Yeah, because then I just focus on the people that's on the front row, and I don't see all the other people.
I don't even do that. I look over the people. I mean, now that sounds so weird. I look above you. I have my, if you're going to do a big session, it's not a give and take. Although I do tend to pick out people and usually heckle them. So instead of them heckling me, I heckle them. But I'm prepared at that point. If it's a smaller thing, it might be more off the cuff. Might be more of a conversation or something like that, right? Because you can do that with a smaller room. But when you get into the bigger one, you're very well prepared and you just do your thing. I don't necessarily look at anyone in the face per se, and it's not that I'm not trying to. It's just I'm doing my thing. I sort of just glancing around. But I do, to break up the monotony, or to also make it a little bit of a participation type of thing. I will pick on somebody usually, and that's what I do. Is I actually literally pick on them too. You've seen me do it. It's always depends on the room too.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with a Norwegian users group, the picking on someone is fun, and the people like that, and they get a little bit more lively by it, right? Which is the other rules: know your audience. But
I tend to do similar stuff, but I more or less do, if you've never done it before, and that's maybe a tip.
Do you remember the first time you ever presented?
Oh gosh,
the first time you got thrown into, hey, Alex, get up and talk about this. You're like, huh? What?
No, actually, I don't.
You don't? I remember my first time quite well.
I not flown anywhere, but I remember like the first time I did a Citrix user group here in Norway. That was actually in the same on this at the same location that you went to. So
the
that's
Dr.
actually
Holmes
probably
Hotel,
the Dr. Holmes Hotel. I think that's the first place I've had a real like not the breakout session with a smaller amount of people, but a big room, right, with 100 people. So I guess maybe that was. I think that was the first. That would be 2004 or something like that.
Cool. Yeah, I remember the first time.
You know, the tip should be start doing a breakout session, for example, if you're afraid of bigger crowds. Sorry for interrupting you.
No. You're the guest, man. I'm interrupting you. I have two things. One, to simplify it, like I did earlier, find a gap and fill it. You wanna do great things. Find a gap and fill it. There's so many gaps out there, right? There's this whole, back in the day, there was printing problems. I saw a printing problem. I filled it, right? There's all, you can go around them at these people that have done these little papers or an app or a script or whatever. They found a gap and they filled it. Find a gap and fill it. There's a billion gaps out there. There's billions things to do.
It's more or less like the way that I came into the CTP role was that you remember the old Citrix installation manager?
Yeah, of course I do.
And that was the gap that I filled because at the time I wrote.
Oh, I remember that. I remember, yes.
The GidWim guide, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And there was a guide, a couple of 100 pages on the typical applications we had back in the mids of 2000s. Which were the typical application that almost every company in the world had, right? Like Office, Adobe, SIP, all these necessity apps, right? And I just built and built, and nobody else was doing that, right? But there were a lot of big ass companies out there that was using Installation Manager to roll out their applications to the images, right? So yeah, that's a good point. Find a sweet spot or a hole to fill, and if that means writing a code, script, writing something, making a GUI for something, whatever. That's a great tip, Doug.
Yeah, find a gap and fill it. I mean, that's what you said. That's exactly just sort of simplified. I've always thought about tear down the hurdles. But that's what an engineer is there for. Definitely a pre-sales engineer is to tear down those technical hurdles. And if you want to do great things, find those gaps and fill them. There's so many, and the people that know the gaps the best are the people that face it every single day, right? When you're an engineer in the trenches, you know the problems, and you probably create workarounds, maybe productize that, so to speak. Share that, like you started off saying. Share. So I do remember the first,
because we were sharing. Yeah, sorry.
No, please.
Yeah, it's a good point because I remember at the time when I was writing this GidWim guide, we had like 10, 12, 15, 20, what have you, projects that was going on with this technology. And I was facing that every single day. And I was finding the workarounds. I knew probably at the time, knew the technology better than the PMs at Citrix that made it, right? Because you were using
because you had to figure it out.
Yeah. And I remember I was in a CTP meeting and you were there as well. And the technology was sort of like 2 or 3 years old. And I was telling the product managers that, hey guys, you need to do this. Oh, we haven't thought about that. Yeah, but that will make a world of sense, right? Because this is an issue in order for us to make it even better. And I guess that's also a part of the engineer. Tear stuff down and work with it and find the solution.
You got it. I read a great book years ago, and they talked about byproduct. And I've told this speech or this lecture so many times, but we all have byproducts. So, for example, mine was I knew how to write documentation. So I came to Citrix. I wrote a book on documentation. book didn't follow the rules of projects, and I had scope creep, and it turned into an instructional guide. But that's a different story. You knew a lot about. I'm installation manager, so you wrote a document that turned into a big guide that turned into almost a book about installation manager. Mm-hmm. It was your byproduct, right? It wasn't that you said, okay, let's go. What do I need to do? It's no, you had the byproduct of your job, of your expertise, of your, of your toil and sweat and blood was this knowledge. You shared it, mm-hmm. right? We all have byproducts. A good example of a byproduct from this book I read was the timber company or industry. They'd cut down trees, they'd take them into the sawmills, they'd cut it into lumber, and they'd sell that out to the lumber yards, right? Well, what they ended up with was all the sawdust. At first, it was waste. It was garbage. They tried to throw it away. It was expensive to throw away. They tried to burn it. That wasn't very good. They tried to give it away, and then they started realizing some people want this. They started selling it. Mm-hmm. And today, they actually make more money. I believe that's what I read. They make more money selling the sawdust, the byproduct, than they do the lumber itself. What they thought was garbage or nothing, turned into a brilliant thing, right? Find that byproduct that's you have as a person. Maybe it's outside of your job. Maybe it's your personal hobby, right? We all have byproducts. You share those, you can create a new industry, right? It's really great stuff. It's a really interesting way to think of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I will tell when I started to say it a couple times, and just in case somebody's like, Doug, what it was. So I was a junior engineer, and I was working with a senior, and I've actually told the story I think on the podcast before, but maybe years ago. And he said, Doug, you need to start presenting. And I was like, yeah, I don't want to do that. It's like, no, you need to do it. I was like, I don't want to do that. It's like, come on, you got to do it. I think he was more forceful, but and anyway, so one day we're at a board meeting for a school board. We all went to school. I went to school. I didn't really like school much, and here I am at a school board, which I thought was a lot of fun. And next thing I know, he says, "And Doug's now going to stand up and talk to you about Citrix." I'd never spoken in front of her. I had no speech ready. I didn't know what to say. I'd never, I didn't know how to format a story. I was just an engineer, right? Not just an engineer. And I got up there and I did probably one of the worst jobs I've ever done. 2004, the CUGC, after you guys got me drunk all night, was equal to that session. But you remember that one?
Yeah.
These guys, they drink until 5 a.m. and then they start off and they put the Americans on at 8 a.m. And you can't leave the drinking because they get mad at you. And they basically sleep in the audience, and then all the Norwegians, they have their sessions in the afternoon. It's not fair. So
no, I felt for you, brother. I felt for you. It's the Viking way of doing stuff, right? It's been this for 1,000 years, 1,000 plus actually.
Damn Vikings. Anyway, so he threw me up there, and it was amazing. And when I get done, I was like, "What the bleep did you make me do?" And he goes, "Next time you'd be prepared." I was like, "I would have been prepared this time if you would have told me." He's like, "Next time you would have anticipated." Like, oh God. But yeah.
So every time you come to Norway, you know what to expect, right?
Well, the next time speaking of anticipation and being prepared, the next time I went, I don't remember this, but I think I went back like a couple years later, and I started off telling how many of you guys were here in 2004, and a few people raised their hand. I said, I apologize. It was Bjorn's fault. They all laughed because Bjorn is a Norwegian. If you know Bjorn, you know what I mean. He kept filling me full of little schnapps that tasted really good, and I didn't realize that there was really high alcohol, and it's what did me in. And I'm pretty sure I was still drunk the next morning. I know I was because I didn't stop with him until at least 5. So anyway, so the next time I went, I prepared myself. So I recorded. Do you remember this? I recorded my entire session in video. And so I get up there and I say, hey, it was Bjorn's fault, but I'm not stupid. In case Bjorn does it to me again, I'm not going to not say yes. I'm just going to have a workaround. And that is, I've recorded my entire session. They're like, yeah, whatever, So I pressed play, and it was, "Hello, Norway. I'm Doug, and today we're going to talk about," and I literally had recorded the entire session with me, right there. So I could have just pressed record and sat down with all the Norwegians half asleep.
Yeah, I remember. I remember that.
Yeah. Those were good days. Listen, we were young and crazy, and it was good. I sound like I'm such an old man, don't I? We have gray hairs nowadays, Alex. We have gray hairs.
Yeah.
Okay, my friend. Well, I think that's all I have for you. If there's anything else, any recommendations, anything you'd like to, give you the last word, and we'll call it a podcast. Sound good?
Yeah, recommendation, stay safe, wear a mask, listen to the authorities, I guess, so we can get out of this messy COVID situation we're up against until the vaccines come.
I agree.
It's not a political statement. It's just
That's
facts,
exactly right.
It's
That's exactly right.
It's science.
It's
science.
I you know what? I don't know how much the masks help, but let's say they helped 1%. Let's say they helped 0.01%. Well, that's 0.01% more than if you don't. And that's my whole philosophy. I don't know how much they help. I can read articles on both sides. I really don't care, right? All I know is that they probably help a little tiny bit more than not having one, right? And maybe much more, right? See my point? So I have no problems wearing one whatsoever, not at all. They do itch though. I grew a beard during Corona, which I will shave as soon as I can go out again. And it does itch my face after a while, but it's my excuse to tell my wife we need to leave the store now. So
yeah.
I have that built in, right? This has been a perk all the way around.
Yeah, but I mean, it's actually, I've read some science reports on it, and actually it's pretty effective if you have the ones with some sort of fiber in them. With this
normal
all
mass.
this, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I think, my wife's father owns a company. They do removal of hazardous chemicals from buildings. So like when they're tearing down a building or let's uprooting a gas station or something, remove all the hazardous chemicals. And anyway, he has these masks that are for that. And he was like, yeah, we can give you some, when you're flying back to America, what have you. But you have to take it off after an hour and a half or you will die. I'm like, okay, that's definitely keeps the bad stuff out, including the O2, right?
Yeah, because that's, I remember when I started using the masks early summer when it was, because the Norwegian authorities were pretty strict on this. When you were in the store, you had to wear a mask. And tight places, right?
Yeah, it's common courtesy,
You get dizzy. You get dizzy because you're breathing not fresh air all the time, right? Because it gets recycled if you don't have a proper mask.
Well, I could imagine myself on the airplane putting this on and then falling asleep and not waking up. I slept 2 hours and I should have only slept an hour and a half. Ooh, did not pick the right time to oversleep my alarm. You know what I mean? So anyway, maybe this is the way he tells me that he did not want me to marry his daughter. On that note, I think we've gone completely from up way high to down low, which is usually what I do. So, Alex, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chatting with you. You're a good guy. I've known you a long time, and it's a pleasure to call you a friend. So thanks so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing your views with us all.
It was truly my pleasure to speak with you today, Doug. Wishing everybody happy holidays and a happy new year, and let's see each other when we get out of this, and let's meet up at Synergy or Nutanix.next or what we're getting at the other end of this.
I can't wait. Okay, thanks, bud. Okay, so that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Special thanks to our guest today, Alex from Nutanix, and really great job. Really fun to hear what he has to say, and I really enjoyed this conversation. So, like I said at the intro, we've been having some great conversations, and today is definitely up there in the top of that list. So, really great stuff. What else I say? But thank you very much, Alex, for taking the time to do this, and I truly appreciate it. I can't wait to see you again, my friend. Can't wait to see you again. So what else do I say? But thank you all. This might be my last podcast. It will be my last podcast for 2020. 2020 is going to be great. We're going to do many more. I personally sort of like 2020, I must say. I think I've talked about this on the show already, but I got to spend time with my wife. I got to spend time building an IGL community the way I wanted to, without interruptions, without travel. It's many things I miss, of course. We can go on and on and on. Just my health has taken a beating because I'm not out and about and exercising the way I should be and things of that nature. But there's perks to it too, and I choose to look at the things that I definitely can affect and the positives in my life. And there's so many positives, and I bet there are in yours too. So at this holiday season time, December, definitely look at all those great things and say thank you for them and enjoy yourself. In Germany, we're now in a lockdown, so we can't. There's nothing open except for the essentials, the grocery stores, the pharmacies. A pharmacy is called Apotheke. I love that word, by the way. In German, the Germans are like, no, it's Apotheke. Yeah, it's close enough, right? So anyway, as good as my German gets. But yeah, what do I say? I hope you guys have a great holiday season and a wonderful 2021. And if I had one wish for 2021, it would be for everyone to be healthy and happy. My second wish would be to see you all again. So I can't wait for that to happen. Yeah, but it's coming. It's coming. I definitely know this. So what else do I say? But thank you all for listening to the ABCC Radio, and have a very happy holidays and a very, very, very wonderful new year. Thank you all.
CC?
DABC.
Say it again. DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again? DABCC.
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.